Okay, so I just did a time-lapse version of what I'm gonna do here. Had surprisingly high amount of people asking how to break a goose down about as deep as I'd like to go. I'll include breast, tenders, legs, heart, liver, gizzard, and fat for rendering. Hopefully your bird's not too center punched. You can tell pretty easily what you're dealing with when you look at a bird. This one doesn't have any blood and also doesn't have any sort of mass stickers of bloody feathers. It's pretty smooth going through the down here. This one was hitting the head pretty good, which is what you always want to do when you're hunting birds. Anyways, got a couple dogs that want to play fetch, but we're gonna jump in here. Right now I'm feeling for the wishbone, where the two bones, well I guess it's one bone, where they come together and meet at the breastplate. I'm gonna poke right above it to sort of open the skin, and then I can rip down with my thumb and kind of open those feathers up with the skin, not making a mess. And what I'm gonna do is work my way down using the center of the breastplate, that ridge bone, as my guide. So I'm gonna get down to where that ends and where the guts would be behind, and then I'm gonna go wide. I'm gonna tear down along the breasts, down to the wing here, along the side, same on the opposite breast, down to the wing, and down the side. What I'm gonna get is this large goose breast right there. The next step is I'm gonna go right below the wishbone, down to the breastplate, and all the way along that breastplate ridge bone. And then I'll go the opposite way along the wishbone, cutting deep to get all the meat off. From here, I sort of work my fingers along the connective tissue that's holding the breast to the plate. Just sort of tear that. The next cuts are going to be to separate skin and fat as well as artery. And you'll sort of be able to swing this breast out. And now we got to be a little careful to make sure you don't cut yourself, because a lot of times you're not going to have the best visual of where your blade is, because it's going to be covered with meat and feathers. So I'm just going to sort of work as high as I can above the shoulder with a wing bone. Just cut that breast off. And I'll take the tender, just sort of a few slices along the breastplate into the cavity above the heart. Separate that. I'll do the same on the other side. You might hear it separating there from the breastplate. Hey, what are you doing? Remember to make sure you know where your fingers are in relation to your blade. And there we are. So we're going to move on to the legs, which are undoubtedly kind of a hassle. Most states don't require you to remove the legs per wanton waste laws. I think that if you're cooking low and slow or used to that style of cooking, or sous vide, which is the way I tend to go, you can put legs in the cooking situation low and slow, 160, 170, maybe a little higher, for 10 to 24 hours. Break those connective tissues down, those tough leg muscles that geese tend to have, especially wild birds, and you can make use of them. And it doesn't take very many geese before you've got a handful of legs and overall a pretty decent amount of some high quality meat. So with the legs, I try to loosen up the skin and connective fascia between the skin and the muscle, and sort of push the leg, try to work the skin and feathers down towards this knee joint as much as I can, and eventually my finger, like it just did, will puncture through the skin at a weak spot, and you can sort of separate without making a ton of mess. You don't want feathers everywhere. That's one thing any bird hunter knows. Minimal amount, no biggie. So I'm going to continue to work this skin down. Yeah, I know you want to play fetch, but I'm doing something. So just hold on, dude. There's usually skin and feathers attached below the leg. You can poke through and tear them off there. So I've worked what essentially is this little bird ham loose. There's one ball socket joint in the leg, and I'm gonna pop that. And then along the ribs, below the ribs, along the back of the bird, I'm just gonna make a few cuts to separate the meat. And voila. You know, we can clean this up later, but I don't know how heavy it is, but it's a lot, and usually geese have a lot of fat, so you can confit with its own fat attached to it. So I'm gonna do the same on the other side. I will admit that if there's, you know, a lot of bloodshot or a few pellets running through a thigh, I'll just leave it. I won't deal with it unless it's in a state that mandates you take care of it, like I believe Montana. But it's really hard to deal with the legs when they're shot up and the BBs or pellets have busted up the bones. Bird bones are hollow. When they break, they sort of splinter. They're no fun. So again, just working the skin, the hide away from the meat, getting down to where that bone is so I can pop that like that, and then take a couple cuts and pull that off. Another leg. Moving internally, you've got this soft spot under the plate. It's just a little bit of skin, so I'm going to make a quick cut across, pull the plate back. I can reach up, grip the heart, pull it out. And I can already tell that this is a really healthy bird. Luckily, it was hit only in the head, so we're not losing anything here. Now, in the cavity along the top of the gizzard, moving down to what we call the Pope's nose, kind of the asshole end, this bird has a lot of nice clean fat. Right, I'm gonna pull as much of this out as I can to render, and I can confit with it or use it, you know, as just a cooking oil. You can do a whole lot, you know, just substitute your cooking oil with rendered goose fat, and you'll get some flavors that are gonna be a little new to you, but should be surprisingly nice. So I'm gonna sort of separate these chunks of fat from the wall of the bird in here. Trying not to mess with any lower digestive tract parts. Right, look, I mean, that's just globs of this nice healthy fat. Okay, that's pretty much the fat we're going for. The next step, if you're going this far, which, you know, not everyone does, nor do they have to, but it's an option. You're just gonna cut away. There's two parts to the gizzard here. One where you're gonna see a lot of crop rocks, gravel for breaking down the food. And then another, I think, is kind of like an exit tube. Just cut those two away. You'll clean that later. Then if you want, you can reach in, find the liver, cut right above it, and then sort of pull it out. Now there's a bile sac on livers. It's, you know, they emit enzymes to help break things down. You don't necessarily want that on there. In fact, anything that looks green, you'll end up probably cutting away just to be safe and not want to taint the flavors. But there's a liver. Whoop. Now let's sort of quickly look around. This bird is so healthy that, you know, its intestines have just fat laced through them. Thing is, they also have blood, little veins that run through these tracts of fat. And here's a little example. If you want, you can get, you know, real crazy and clean it all out and take some fat. But generally, that fat down on the Pope's nose area is going to be plenty and about all that's really worth your time. And unless you only have a few birds, then you might want to pick some more up to sort of maximize your yield. More fat globs, that is, but Pope's nose will have plenty on a few healthy birds. And I mean, there you are. You know, we've taken this honker from a dead bird. This one actually died a week ago, and I like to let them age if it's cold. Anyways, we've taken it apart and got pretty much everything that we can use out of it. If you really want even more, you can pluck the bull or bird whole. That's a lot of work for these geese, and I think everyone should try it once or twice, see if they like that whole cooked goat or goose. But when you have 15-20 birds after a weekend with a buddy or two, sometimes the best way to handle it is just breast a bunch out, maybe pluck one or two if they're clean. This would have been a great bird to pluck. Every pellet that hit him was in the head or neck, and a big bull Canada goose down, and we cleaned them up. I hope you guys have learned something. I know that it's taken me, you know, a few years of doing this for 15 years. It took me a while to figure it out, but as of about 5-6 years ago, this is pretty much how I do it. Thanks. Okay, one more goose leg. We're gonna take the sharp knife, sever all the connective tissues around that leg bone, right? You know, I think like 3 out of 4 of the sides, you know, it's round, so there's no real sides, but it seems like 75% of the bone has some sort of connective tissue around it. If the leg folds like that, just flip her over. You're gonna bend backwards and twist, and voila. Now you've got a little handle on a bone-in goose leg and thigh with fat, ready for confit or whatever you're into. Give it a go.